Welcome, everybody, to the last lesson before we head off to Easter. I hope that even as you guys are preparing, there's a sense of anticipation and excitement about being able to step into that time. But I'd like you to tell me as we start, what is the thing that you are most looking forward to about Easter? Is it, again, time with your family? Although I'm guessing you've had a fair amount of that. Is there something specifically that you're going to be able to do around the house? Or maybe again for some of you being able to get away to a certain location. I don't know exactly what all your families are doing, but what is the thing that you are most looking forward to about Easter as we step into that window? Well, as we left off on Monday, we were talking about a guy by the name of Gerbert, a guy that had risen to the top spot within the church despite being a serf. And as we think about his time of leading the church, you're going to see as a matter of study, he was first sent to Spain. And as he was there, he basically said, you know what? I want people below me to be able to study things other than just what the church has put out. And it isn't that there's anything inherently wrong with that, but there are other areas of study as well. We talked about on Monday this idea of a liberal arts education. He said, we want to have people that are well rounded, and there are people of other faiths, as Gerbert taught, that are going to have things that are valuable to education. And so he had people read classical authors. That means Greek and Roman things of the past. He had people read Muslim scholars as well as Jewish writers as well. As you look at that, you're going to see the students under Gerbert being well rounded. Well, he finally reaches the ranks of Pope, like I said on Monday, but within 4 years, he has died. Again, I think that his main legacy was kind of how he brought his students along, even as a role or in his role as a teacher. So 999, he's going to be crowned Pope. 4 years later, he passes away. But the idea of being able to rise from the rank of a serf to become the highest individual within the Catholic Church, pretty significant. As we think about education moving forward, this will conclude our conversation about education. In the 1100s, you're going to see universities coming out of what were called cathedral schools. So, as we think about universities and where they started, this is the window where that was going to happen. In topics beyond just what the church is offering, there's going to be a need for people to study things like law and medicine. I'd even throw history in there, but things that are going to be in a broader scope than typically what the church had focused on up to this point. So now they're going to open universities to accomplish that. However, the reality is that a lot of people are not doing these areas of study. They're not focusing on them. And so as a result, you're seeing students move to where certain teachers are that are experts in their field. You still see this today, especially at the graduate level. If there's a particular scholar or somebody that is an expert in their field, people will aim to go to certain graduate programs to study under an individual that's going to be the top in that field, whether that be engineering, that be history, that be English, whatever. You're going to see people trying to get into certain programs to be able to study under certain key scholars. It's within this set of environments that you're going to see these new ideas beginning to percolate, them encouraging growth of thought, of reason, being able to cultivate the mind, not just focusing only on the religious side, but also on the intellectual side as well, and really pushing students to pursue those things. Education going to grow into what we're going to see it become even today as a result of this time period. Well, as we move away from education, I think there is something that is convenient in terms of its connection with today. One of the things that we haven't talked about yet is going to be the bubonic plague or the Black Plague. And even as we look at this window, it's ironic that we're doing this online because of the current pandemic that we're facing. But within the Black Plague, I think it's worth getting to look back to how things were during those days. So we're going to be focusing on the Black or the bubonic plague. Now, kind of where does it begin? As you look at this, we're going to see the Black Death or the Black Plague starting off in China. The early to mid 1300s, again, depending on how you look at the 1330s, but either way, it starts showing up in roughly that window of time. But as we've seen, even as the COVID 19 has spread, a lot of that has to do with trade and travel. It starts off in China, but is quickly brought to Europe. And one of the things that people have suggested, again, that was going to be a carrier of that was what was up on the top part of the screen there, which were fleas. Many people or scholars have suggested that those fleas were on rats that were on ships. And as the ships would come to Europe, they would carry these fleas that would then infect humans. As carriers of the disease, the fleas would then attack or infect humans, and then the humans would be facing the disease. It depends on who and what you read, but there are some reports that have kind of, as they look at this window, the number of people killed up to 50% of the population. Now, half of the population to us might seem like unreal, perhaps even impossible. But when you start hearing about and reading about the fear and the reality of people dying, it seems to be that it could have happened such that 50% of the population died. Either way, even if it's as low as 30, that's still a very significant number. One in every three people that are going to perish because of this disease. Pretty rough. Well, as we think about the infection that's going to come, a lot of times people have referred to it as the Black Plague. Again, there's a couple of different thoughts behind why that was the term chosen, but other people have called it the bubonic plague, and that term is going to arise from the term bubos, or the swelling that you're going to see in the image there, which is pretty gross, on the victim's neck, their arms, typically in the armpit area or even the groin. The other place that it would grow is a little bit higher up the thigh, which is going to be the femoral artery as well, and that's almost the groin area. But either way, you're seeing these swelling areas grow. Typically, it's going to range maybe as small as an egg, which, if you think about an area of swelling, that's not that small, but up to something as big as an apple. That would basically be probably close to the size of a baseball. You think about a growth that big rising up on you, it's pretty gross. It's pretty gross. As you think about the overall survival rate that's going to go along with this, the survival rate is pretty small. In fact, I would say that the majority of people that would contract it, many of them would die. And within that week window, that was when typically people would perish. They would get it, and then they would have roughly a week before they would die. You think about contracting something like that and basically knowing it was a death sentence, pretty rough. And it didn't help that doctors, the image that you saw at the beginning, kind of that beaked individual was a doctor. That was how the doctors dressed. They basically did not know how to care for that specific illness. They didn't have anything to do, certainly not respirators or the ability to give pain killing medicine to people. They didn't have any of that. And so these people would die in agony as you look at the end for them. As you look at this is going to be one of the most ravaging things that's going to happen to Europe during this window of time. Well, we'll come back as we wrap up this window of time, as we think about the ending of the Black Plague and how that's going to play out within society as well. And then we will be done for today. See you guys soon.